Hello, hello, hello. And I'm excited today because I'm giving you a little bonus show, a little interview with one of the ladies that's in my wonderful fine membership, Karen Collins. So, Karen, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jane, for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm really happy to have you here because, as a representative of one of the women in the program who's taken consistent action. You joined Wonderful Fine last January, I believe. Is that right?
Correct, last
Yep.
January.
Yep. And you've been taking consistent action all year with little steps, and you've had some really great wins. So I'd love to just share some of what's happened with you over the last year with our audience, and hopefully for them to get inspired and not feel like this is too hard to do, because you're an example of what's possible. So, first question for you, Karen, is where were you before you started, and then where are you now?
Well, when I look back, it's like anything. We get up in the morning, we don't feel well, and we don't know why. So mine started last September of 2020 in the middle of the pandemic.
Mhm.
And the first thing happened was I wasn't sleeping very well. So I called a nutritionist that I knew, and she connected me to her physician assistant and had a conversation with her. And it wasn't only not the sleeping, but there was all the other things that we ignore in our lives. And so she decided to do some food sensitivity tests, which I really wasn't aware of. I didn't know anything about that. And it came back that I was sensitive to casein and dairy and
Yeah.
almonds. And I was eating almond butter every day, Jane, with an apple.
Wow.
That was my primary snack. So anyway, so she talked about, how food and the whole leaky gut, which you could elaborate more on that, but how it affects our body and causes our body to see things as foreign and create inflammation. And I had inflammation. So,
Mhm.
um, so I took the casein or the dairy out of my diet, which was hard because, like a lot of people, like I don't know if I could give up cheese. I love cheese, and and then also when I was cooking, everything was with butter. I love the flavor of butter, and so that was my first step. And but I was noticing improvements. The things that I noticed was I had like dark circles always under my eyes, and like maybe 3 months later, I looked in the mirror and I'm like, wow, is this like dairy and allergies like connection? So then in January of this year, somebody sent me a link that you had posted about breaking up with sugar. And I love cookies. I always say when we go out for dinner, it's not what's for dinner, it's what's for dessert. I
Yeah,
love
I was
sweets.
the same way,
so and then also when I had met with this physician assistant at the nutritionist office, she brought to my attention that my A1C sugar was at 5.8, and the range was like, I want to say 4.3 to 5.7. And I said, well, my doctor said it's normal. She said, Karen, that's zero point 0.2 away from 6, and 6 you're considered a pre-diabetic. And I'm like, wow, I didn't know that. So that was like, and then the things that was happening was, like everyone in the pandemic, I was probably drinking more wine, having more bowls of chips,
Karen.
just, and I would had put on 10 pounds. And even though I was active outside, it was what was going in. It's not, like I always say, it's not the exercise, it's what you're eating. So anyway, when I met you, you taught me in that break up with sugar 5-day challenge was to read labels. And I was putting fructose corn syrup in lots of things I didn't know. And
So
maple
hidden.
syrup, maple syrup in my oatmeal every morning. I was eating lots of fruit, which fruit is good for you, but you have to at some stage figure out how much fruit. So then I met you, and then you told me all your story about how you cured yourself of rheumatoid arthritis. And then at the time, like from the fall where I was, I struggled. I struggled to turn over in my bed. I struggled to get out of my bed. I struggled to put on my socks. I struggled. And then when I had gone to the doctor in the spring, because it still got to be too much, they said I had osteoarthritis in my neck and in my lower back, and my hands. I would wake up and they would be throbbing with pain.
Yeah.
And so went to physical therapy. That's usually what they recommend. And so I listened to you tell your story about functional medicine. And I thought, functional medicine? Wow. They're the people who find out what's causing the pain. They're not the
Mm,
ones who's like giving you a prescription. So I found a functional medicine, a doctor, a nutritionist, and then she started doing more testing. And so then I gave up gluten. And once I gave up gluten, I saw a huge improvement in my pain. So first I
yeah.
gave up dairy in like November. Then I gave up sugar in January. And then I think it was in April, I gave up gluten. So it was baby steps. And
Mm,
also I started losing weight. I would say to the functional medicine nutritionist, like, I'm losing weight and I'm not doing anything. I'm actually eating more. I'm eating things like kale and spinach and it was like quinoa and like eating things that I didn't normally eat, but it was like but I was eating more food. And
hmm.
so I saw that. And then as the year, this past year went on, and when I joined your wonderful fine group, you taught me so much. You like kitchen coaching. You would tell us certain things about like planning meals. Like now, like I changed, I plan meals better, and I shop better. I read labels.
Hmm.
So I have to say, it's been about 15 months, and I have so much more energy. My mind is a lot clearer. Like before, I'm saying like the summer of 2020, if I happened like 18 holes of golf, I had to go to bed. And the next day, I don't ask me to do anything. I was just physically exhausted. Like this summer, that was one things I noticed playing golf. I was like, I could walk because we don't normally take a cart. I could walk, and I was like, wow. So then, as you know, recently I ran a 5K, and I thought I was never going to get back to running again because my hips would be sore, my back would be sore, and I guess the message for people who are listening today is um, take food as medicine. And it doesn't matter if you're running half marathons or you're running and whatever you're doing, it's what you put in your mouth, and you have to find out what is
Hmm.
right for you.
Hmm.
So,
And Karen, really great. Love all like the breadcrumbs and the connecting the dots that you did. Like you, one thing led to another thing, led to another thing, and your path to wellness became revealed to you. But you also took action. How hard would you say it is? Like, so you made changes to the way you ate. So I want to go back actually because you mentioned leaky gut, and I just want to mention that. So if you have pain and inflammation, you have leaky gut. Probably, most likely you do. That's where the small intestine lining, it's got like these villi, and it's only one cell thick, and it can like tear.
mm-hmm,
And then you actually do become sensitive to the foods that you're eating because those foods are never supposed to get into your bloodstream. They're little food particles, and they do. So you become sensitive. So when you start having food sensitivities, it's a sign that you probably do have leaky gut. So the very first thing you got to do is, I would say, reduce stress. We didn't talk about any of the emotional stuff, but also stop putting in the foods that are causing the inflammation. And some of the main trigger foods are gluten, dairy is pretty common, sugar, corn, soy, pretty much processed foods. So you did that first step, and you did it like one at a time. And how hard has it been to make that transition? Because some people will say, I could never give up gluten, or I could never give up sugar or dairy, or how has that transition been for you? How hard?
I think it was very difficult, and especially when you're in a household with other people and you're cooking for them. And so I would let them, not let them, but they would have meals that they wanted if they were, bringing home takeout that I wasn't eating. So I would, but most of the meals I prepared every night, we all ate. And I got to tell a funny story because my son came home with the pandemic as well from college, and he was 240, and now he's almost 190. So he's learned from my eating habits
He's a
and what I
wonderful fine
cook.
man.
He's a wonderful man.
Yeah, perfect.
But anyway, but it is, but so like saying like, and I tried the elimination diet and I found it very hard because it was giving up the corn, the soy, everything. So I think I did it for a while. And the other thing I had to add was it depends upon the type of person you are. I was keeping a food journal, and I know you talk
Mm,
about in our program the food, mood, and poop journal, and I was doing that. And I think, doing that for a week or so, you can see patterns of
mhm.
what you ate. Like corn chips. I didn't realize it, but like when you have guacamole and you have those corn chips, my body doesn't like corn. I don't know. And then maybe it's because it's engineered corn and there's enzymes
Probably.
in it that I can't process, but I know the next morning my fingers are very stiff. Same thing
Yeah.
with potato chips and the nightshades, the potatoes and the tomatoes and the peppers. Though my body doesn't like those either. And then
Mm,
so it's like if I have, a bowl of chips, I know the next day how I feel. So
right.
I would say baby steps. I think it's very difficult in a working world where you have all the other stresses of your life to just make a switch. I think the main thing is that you know what you eat and just start noticing when you eat
Mhm.
something how you feel the next day. And also I have to say wine, like I was never much of a drinker because I was always the designated driver. So
Yeah.
going out, I always had club soda. But I found with the pandemic, I was home more and I was having a glass of wine. And I really think alcohol is very damaging to the body. And I think you have mentioned that how those little villi in your intestine, how it kind of chops their head off. And but I think like if I have wine now, I have it with a meal, so it's absorbed with the food. But like having a glass of wine at night and a bowl of chips, that doesn't happen
Mhm.
anymore because I know that I don't want to feel the consequences the next day. So
I
I
think
would
that's
say it's not all or nothing. I would say make gradual changes and also try different things. Like right now, I'm working on diversity because I tended to eat the same thing all the time. And we all know that the nutrients in our food is not the same as it was many years ago. I had to tell a story. I had a setback one time, and my nutritionist had recommended magnesium to help with sleep. And so it was a delicious liquid, lemon vanilla
uh,
um, magnesium. And I felt like I was getting a treat in the evening, having this. But I noticed about 5, 6 days in, my hands again, I was waking up and they were paining. So I looked at the label and I saw that it was xanthan gum. Now you know more about that than I do, but I'm like, what is that? And I stopped it and my pain went away. So
mhm.
that is a thickening agent that I see now in a lot of labels. A lot of gluten-free food has it too.
Yep. But it
That
basically does a lot of the same thing that gluten did. So,
Yeah, yeah, that was bad. And also
yeah.
the other thing too, when I switched to give up cheese, which was really hard, so one of my siblings said, "Well, try like the artificial cheese," and because there's a lot out there. Again, I saw in that potato starch, and that so when I went from like dairy to sugar, like I saw a change, but I didn't see a significant change because when I was substituting things, there were still things in there that my body didn't like. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I
Mhm.
think what you're saying is you really learn the power of reading labels and paying attention, keeping that food journal. So, that's one of the tools that I have in Wonderful Find. The other thing is knowing foods to make. I mean, it's a different way of cooking than most of us are used to cooking. So, I have recipes and things like that in there. And I know you've used some of the recipes in the Wonderful Fine cookbook, but it's just you need help, right? It's hard to go it alone with doing this. But so I wanted to point out, so through doing all this, you have you have a lot less pain than you used to have, more energy. And how are you sleeping now?
I still, I think I don't need as much sleep as I think I need. I think
Oh,
like going to bed at
that,
9:30 is not like, if I go to bed at 11, I tend to sleep through, but my body somehow tends to wake up when it is looking for something, insulin or something is looking for something, but it's a lot better. And I wake up much more rested. Like
mhm.
before, when I woke up, I couldn't get back to sleep, but now if I do happen to wake up, I can go right back to sleep.
Mm.
So it,
That's
it
good.
has improved,
Yeah.
definitely. Hmm.
That's excellent. That's excellent. Okay. So, what are some of the new habits that you have? Because one of the things about Wonderful Fine, I want to come back to the mindset. So, I teach a lot about mindset because I learned along my journey, it's not just about food. Like you can be eating the best food in the world, but if you're feeling crappy about it, like hate this stuff or hating on your body, like your body's not going to heal. So I do a lot about mindset as well. And those are again are it's kind of like a different way of thinking, starting to have awareness of what your thoughts are. So and creating new habits, new lifestyle habits. So, what are some of the new habits you've started doing, Karen?
Well, I think the first one that you introduced us to was the water. Like I know I was not drinking enough water. And you told us about the glass, and every time you have a glass, you put a rubber band around it. I still do that, and I try to get in 4 or 5 of those a day. And I think that has helped. Um, One of the other things, I'm getting sidetracked, but I'm going to come back to that, was in the fall of that year, I had a huge rash on my arm, and I had
Oh,
gone to the dermatologist for my annual physical, and she said, I'll write you a prescription for that. And I said, no, that's okay. I said, I think it's food related. I think I'm going to experiment with that. And that has gone. And I think too, like my skin feels a lot softer because of the water. And somewhere I
yeah,
heard like the skin is like a reflection of what's going on in your gut. I don't know if that's true,
absolutely.
but
That's true.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
So I saw that, but that you have a drink of water. But my habits have changed. I think I'm starting to put myself first more, which was a big step. And so now I start my morning with the Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod. And I do that. I do the meditation, the silence, the meditation, the affirmations, visualizing my day and my goals, and reading, journaling, yoga. You've taught us yoga. We had yoga every Tuesday morning. I tend to do my own routine because I feel comfortable, but yoga, I've always said, fixes everything. And I think that, and it doesn't have to be, it can just be 10, 15 minutes of poses that, and the thing I learned was from going to physical therapy for my hip and my back, some of the poses that you do in physical therapy are the same as some of the poses you do in yoga. So I try to incorporate those as well. But doing that motion movement every morning, I think really, really helps.
Mhm.
And I'm just trying to think of some of the other things. Was my kitchen, kind of like trying to stay out of the kitchen in the evening. That's a challenge, but it's a habit, trying, because I think if you go in the kitchen in the evening, you tend to pick and find something to eat, and you're not really hungry, but it's just a habit, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
And
Yep.
also creating that
Television.
weekly, yep, and creating that weekly list of meals that you're having, like creating that on Saturday of what we're going to have, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I think that kind of helps you prepare your meals more healthy, more healthy
Yeah,
meals.
well, I always say you make better choices when you're planning ahead of time. You don't plan, to make bad choices. So if you do meal
Hmm.
planning, it just kind of falls out that you end up making better choices.
Right.
Yeah, that's really great. So what about, so you've been really good. every week we do these weekly wins on Saturday. So what your wins were for the previous week, and what your goals are for the next week. And I got to say, Karen, you're probably one of the most consistent people in the group in doing that week after week after week. And then we really see some changes. You're committing. It's in a Facebook group, but you're committing like publicly, in our private group, what's gone well. So you're celebrating what your wins were, and then you're committing publicly to what you're going to do the next week. So has that helped you? How has that factored into your success?
Absolutely. I think I mentioned in this our weekly win this past week how many years ago when I worked as an executive assistant, my boss used to always have me collect from his direct reports the weekly activity report, and that's similar to it. It's like, what did you accomplish this week? What were your challenges, and what are your plans for next week? And it does. It creates action. It creates accountability. Um, it makes you do what you want to do. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to accomplish everything. Like, I remember in the beginning, I was always drink more water, meditate every day, do 10 minutes of yoga. It was like daily. It was like, but now I've gone on to other things, but it was things that I, was trying to focus on. Like, I think there was one time when I said, use my electric toothbrush every day.
Yes. Yeah, it's small things, right? But just once you commit to it, you make it a habit, and then it's a habit. Like, we all have
hmm
habits, right?
hmm
So once you get
But
the habit going, yeah,
yeah,
it's been
but the
really
thing
good.
is like I put it on my to-do list for Saturday. It's like, wonderful, fine, weekly wins, and I go through and kind of figure out, well, what did I do? And even though I put it in the Facebook, I also have in my notes, so I have them all from the whole year of what I did, and it's good. You can look back and see
Mm,
how you progressed. So I
good
highly
for you.
recommend that tool. I hope that the other ladies in the wonderful fine group use it more, because it will get you further along your journey.
Well, you're a great role model for them. Um, and so we do this group coaching on Zoom twice a month, and that's another thing you've been really consistent in coming to. You don't miss very many of them, Karen, which is really good. How have you found the group coaching like helpful, or what's your big takeaway from that?
Absolutely. One of the things my takeaway was commitment. Like, I joined Wonderful Fine, and there was one time when I kind of got a little busy, and I'm like, oh, I'm not going to do it today. And I'm like, no, Karen, you made a commitment to do this. You got to do this. So, but the group coaching, there's so many interesting ladies in our group, and they come from all walks of life. Some are writers, some are piano teachers, some are all kinds of. And I love the fact that we're in a group of like-minded people. Like, we're all on a
Mhm.
journey to try and improve our health. And
Mhm.
we each share some of our things. We share what our illnesses are, and you give us advice. And a lot of times, the advice that you might be giving to somebody else is like, oh, that's something I should think about. So I just love the fact that we have those two twice a month, the group coaching, and you're awesome at it. Thank you.
Thank you. I love it too. It really touches my heart to see. Well, you guys help each other out too, which is really
Mm,
beautiful. I mean, I do the coaching, but sometimes someone else has got something to suggest on what's worked for them, on a
mhm,
certain issue. So it's
mhm,
really a great. I love that model of group coaching.
mhm,
In
mhm,
fact, I mean, even with my one-on-one clients, I'll suggest that they come to the group coaching because it's just different. You don't feel so alone, right? When you know
mhm.
that other people are going through things. And it's hard if you're in your own little community, as you said, and even in your household where other people weren't, say, eating like you. Well, and especially if you're getting a little bit of flack, like, that's weird, or why don't you just have some cheese, or, that kind of thing. You've got a supportive community that's talking about how they're navigating through those challenges. So
And
I love
also,
that.
it's a group of friends, like I said, like-minded. Like, a lot of my friends are not interested in what I'm interested. Like this is like my new passion now, like wellness. And
I
I
get it.
want I want everyone to learn what's causing their illnesses and become, feel healthy again. But
Mhm.
some of my friends are not interested yet. So I say yet because I'm still working on it.
Everyone's on their own path. That's what I say. And
Mhm. Mhm.
when they're ready, it's like that old proverb, like when you're ready, the teacher will appear, right? So when they're
Mhm.
ready, they'll start like you. This led to
Mhm.
that, led to that, and led to that, and then you find the path. And
Mhm.
so what you've illustrated really beautifully today is that everyone is on their own path, that you can figure out what's right for you. Like we have some common things that are causing inflammation
Mhm.
for a lot of people, like
Mhm.
stress
Mhm.
will cause inflammation for everybody.
Mhm. Mhm.
Certain foods, especially in our day now, the way a lot of foods are made, will cause inflammation for a lot of people. But really, we're all individuals, and we need to find out what works for us. And you've done that by keeping this journal and paying attention. Like that awareness is so key.
Mhm.
So having said that, this everyone's on their own journey, and what's good for one person, it might be different. I want to ask you, because I ask all the guests on my Wonderful Find show. Where is it? There it is. This question: what is one action someone could take today to improve their health? So Karen, you've been on this wellness journey for just over a year. What would be your suggestion of one thing someone could do today?
Oh, it's so hard to just come up with one. Um, I would encourage people to really ask themselves and think about this, is investing financially into their health. Like we invest in our cars or our houses and our children's education, but I really think that you need to think about investing in your health. And I don't mean like pedicures, manicures, those are all good too. But I think investing in, like when you go to the doctor and the doctor says, oh, your A1C is 5.8 and the range is 4.3 to 5.7, and they say it's normal, and they say the insurance company is not going to pay to have it retested because you're you know whatever. I think that if you say to yourself, well, I'm going to go to a functional medicine person, or I'm going to go to somebody and find out what's causing that, because that was alarming for me to find out that I was close to being pre-diabetic, and my doctor was telling me that I wasn't normal. That was alarming. So I would say,
Mhm.
um, and our healthcare system is changing to the point that we are going to have to be the advocates of our health. Where and people are so quick to just get a prescription. And sometimes someone will say, oh, I got a prescription for antibiotics. And I said, well, did they also recommend a probiotic? But, it's like you need to learn, like you learn things, your hobbies, you learn stuff. You need to learn things about your health because you want to learn, or you want to have a long life, and you want it to be a healthy life. I saw my mom, who lived to be almost 98, with arthritis. My family will say to me, oh, Karen, arthritis runs in the family. And I'm like, that's not necessarily true. I said, she would put a third of a cup of milk in her tea. Maybe that milk caused her leaky gut, which led to her inflammation. So we have these habits that we learn, but it's the habits that's causing it, not necessarily that it's hereditary. Now, granted, there are things that are hereditary. I'm not a medical doctor, but you need to learn what's happening to your body. And that somebody once said, you either spend the money now or you spend it later on prescription drugs, on walkers, on whatever you're going to need in your older age to move and function. So I say, take the time, think about it, invest in your health now, today.
I think that's great advice to, maybe set aside a little bit of money every paycheck that you put into a pot that's for investing in your health. I mean, is there any better investment? Like, really, we've got this one vehicle to get through life, and once you just ask anyone whose health is not where it should be, what matters most? It's your health, right? So I really love that. And I will just point out one thing, that because you mentioned genes, they have discovered that it's less than 2% of genes are responsible for permanent coding, and illnesses are not don't turn on from one. Those chronic illnesses don't turn on from one genes. It's many genes that get activated by responding to the environment, and the environment is your foods, your thoughts, your feelings, the air you breathe, the electromagnetic environment, and all those things. So it really is a lot in your control, and you're proof of that, Karen, with the journey
Thank
that
you.
you've gone through this last year. So I want to say a big thank you. I know that you're not used to doing this kind of forum, going live on Facebook. You did awesome, and I so appreciate, and I know the audience will really appreciate hearing your story and what you've gone through. So I thank you so much for sharing it, Karen.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to expect a little sticker in the mail.
Yeah, okay.
No, I'm just kidding.
Perfect. I'll do that. And I want to thank all the people that have been watching and listening, and wish you a very happy holiday season. Take care,
Thank
and
you.
we'll see you again soon. Bye.
Thank you, Jane. Merry Christmas. Bye.
Bye.